Hi guys, welcome back. We have a pretty fun project lined up for today. And I'm assuming since you looked at the thumbnail, you have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be building. And so the premise behind having a steerable tubing drive system, yeah, it sounds good, let's call it that, is basically, so when you're going down like a river tubing, there's always like tree limbs and like boulders sticking up out of the water, and the traditional way to get around it is by flailing and paddling, but that's way too much work when you're just trying to sit back and relax. So let's bring you in here and show you what our ideas and what we're thinking here. So this is our plan here, and you can see this would be like the inner tube, and basically it's a thruster motor that's waterproof that goes on the end of this PVC steering apparatus, and hook up drill batteries in here to power the whole thing. And the idea is just that it kind of clamps around any existing tube, and you'd be able to, just take this to like the tubing outings and just throw it on any of their tubes. All right, for the electrical components to power this thing, what we did is we sourced one of these brushless underwater thruster motors, Amazon, and this should provide enough power to push it around. I've seen reviews of people using these on like kayaks and stuff, so a tube, it's not as aerodynamic, but it should probably work just fine. And then we have a brushless motor ESC here, speed controller. And why I went with this one is that it has a built-in rheostat on it. So it's kind of like cruise control. Basically, you just spin this and that sets your speed there. And then to provide power to it, what we did is got these drill battery adapters, and they make them for Milwaukee, Dewalt, pretty much all the big name batteries. And I have Bauer, which is the Harbor Freight ones, and so that's what these are going to be used. And these are actually the Dewalts, but supposedly they work on Bauer as well. So let's bring you in here and we'll start just setting stuff up to just test the functionality before we get into extending wire lengths and making the rest of the apparatus. So to start on the wiring here, I did run into an issue. So Dewalt is not exactly the same as these Bauer battery packs. And in order to get this Bauer pack to fit in here, there's a little tab here that I had to cut off, and then I also had to cut off these guys here. So if you're trying to use a Bauer pack, you're going to have to do that. But if you're using a Dewalt, you won't have to do any of this kind of stuff. And if you have Milwaukee and use the Milwaukee ones, you won't have to do that either. But let's just hook it up and verify that we're getting power out of here. So let's see here. Maybe we have to turn it on. There we go. 19.4. That's good enough. All right, so we'll just disconnect this for the meantime. And to run our connections here, so the battery pack here goes to these, and then these three wires go to the motor. Pretty easy setup. And just to test and verify that everything's working fine, we're just going to use these These little quick connects, they work really good for this kind of stuff. That one didn't bite. There we go. All right, so we have everything wired up. Probably took a couple of minutes. It's pretty easy just to test out with these things and clip them all together. So let's throw in our battery pack here. And I think we are on. Let's test and see. So that's full power. And off. So, all right, that's awesome. So that's motivating enough to continue with the rest of the build here. So to help out with the planning, I quickly drew up this sketch. It's a roughly full-size sketch of the tube here, our front wood bracket, the motor, and then the steering handle. So we can kind of get an idea of where we're going to lay things out. And so our battery pack will probably go up on top somewhere here. And then this will go in the tube. And then our knob here will come up through the handle there. And then our motor mounts down here. And what we're going to do is make this a slip collar. So if you're coming up on rocks or something, you can pull up on the handle and you won't get this thing torn off. That's the idea. We'll see how well that works. But we got our water drawn in, and that's accurate. But I think to continue, get this out of the way, and we'll start making up our wood piece here. This is just a chunk of 3/4 inch plywood that I already roughed out a similar shape here, and that should work. So let's start by cutting this out on the bandsaw. So we have the wood piece cut out, and right now we're just kind of figuring out about where we're laying out our pieces. And so we have this 1-inch PVC tube cut down to 24 inches. This one's 8 inches, and this one's 3 inches. And then we have 2 couplers, an elbow, another elbow, and a cap. And then down here, we're going to use another coupler with a plug, and then we'll mount our motor to that just because it has a flat side, so it's easier to work with. But this part here needs to pivot in these 2 collars. So the way that the PVC is made is it's not made to pivot. It's supposed to be a tight fit, and there's also a ridge in there. So what we need to do is sand that ridge out, something like that, so that this can just freely spin in there. And the easiest way that I know how to do that is just with a drum sander on a drill. go. That freely slides. That's what we want. So then we'll just do that one more time. So on these same collars that we just drilled out, now we want to drill roughly an 1/8 inch hole through both sides in 2 places. Alright, so after we have those 2 holes drilled, now we're going to drill out the bigger hole. And we just want to dimple in the surface like that so the screw sits flush. Not much, just a little bit. Yep, I think that's good. So then that'll slide around there perfectly. Great, so now that we have all these drilled out, we're ready to mount it to this guy. So we'll just kind of clamp that in there for the time being. Alright, so there's my hole pre-drilled. You can kind of hold it and aim it at the same time there. Yeah, that one's better. Line it up. Alright, the reason that we only put one in each so that now we can line them up so that they're both in the same direction. Alright, so then we can back this one out just slightly. And then we slide this one up. Just kind of leave it there in the end. Screw in one. Alright, so you can tell it has like a little bit of drag. We can always come through afterwards and kind of clean up the inside, give it a little bit more slop and free it up that way. But right now it's totally usable. We can actually start gluing up our bottom piece here. Executive decision. All right, then in the bottom of this tube here, we need to cut a slot so that our wires can come down and around and slide in. So to do that, we're just gonna start by drilling a hole. And then we'll use our multi-tool and cut it into a slot. So then that we have that slot in there, we can take our elbow that goes up there and glue it up so that this piece is pointing down, I think that direction, pointing down the same way that this is pointing down. Alright, we want this pointing the same direction as that. And that looks close enough. I think what we're going to do is mount our rheostat, which controls the speed of the motor, in the top of the handle. So we're going to pop that through the top. So to drill that out, we're just using a 1/4 inch. Right in the middle looks good. Just test that it clears. And that should be pretty good. And then when we assemble it, that's just going to have to get epoxied in there. Right now what we do is we just have this bottom section here glued up in here. So that is one assembly. Then we have this glued up here, so that's another assembly. And we have this glued up here, another assembly, and then this is loose. So these unions, so we can run our wires all through, have to be separated just for ease of assembly, I guess. But so what we'll do is we'll take this, slide it on, slide that on, slide this on, and our cap, and press it all so it's flat. And then what we're going to do is run screws in to keep it from spinning. So roughly there. And then here. Now we will have to come back through, take all these screws back out, and grind off the end so that you don't have a sharp end rubbing on your wires on the inside. So this is just temporarily just to hold it. We could flip it over and do the same thing. Alright, then using just a sheet of ABS, 1/4 inch thick, we're going to cut out a section that's roughly 4 by 18. So this piece of ABS, what it's going to do is get flexed in here and then screwed to the inside of this. So what it'll do is give it some more stability on the actual tube, kind of keep it from twisting around, and the idea is to keep it more flat. So what we did is, so this is 4 by 18, I think, 4 by 16, and every 2 inches or so we're going to drill some holes in here. And then we'll just heat this up, just I mean, it is pliable to fit in there, but we'll heat this up just to kind of make it going in there a lot easier. Alright, yeah, that amount of bend will be really good. The rest will just kind of fill in with, screws, and it'll pull out. So. So to mount the motor on the bottom, so what we're going to do is take this extra scrap piece of 1/4 inch ABS, and we drew out the bottom of that circle. So that'll get cut out there with our 3 mounting holes, which will then get screwed into there. And then these 2 wings here, what we'll do is after we cut those out, bend those up so that they come up around here and then screw into the side. So then we'll be able to mount our motor to here and this to the bottom of that. So let's start by cutting this out on the bandsaw. Alright, so now that our rough shape is cut out, we can start by drilling out our holes. Alright, now that we have these cut out and pre-drilled, what we can do is bend up these tabs here. So to do that, I'm just throwing this in this vise, and it's about right. Clamp it in. Then we're just going to heat up the plastic. Alright, then we just hold it till it cools. It shouldn't take a bit. And there we go, we got one tab done. And we'll just bend up the other one the same way. Alright, so well, that is a tight fit. Let's mount our motor to our bracket here. And then we did countersink the top of these holes so that our flathead screws will sit flush in there. We'll leave that one kind of loose just so we can line up the other ones. Now we can take this and mount it to the side of this here. Didn't notice I had to grind down just a little bit here just to fit that on, but it's pretty good. And do another pilot hole on this side. Alright, so that is pretty sturdy. To make our battery box mount, now this is the size of it here. So what we're going to do is cut this shape out, and this is simulating this tube underneath it. So when that runs underneath it, this will get bent down, and it'll kind of give it a little bit more support as well. And then we left a little bit extra over here so we can drill a hole and mount our on-off switch. So let's cut this out again. Alright, so we have our battery mount here cut out of the ABS, and now we just need to heat bend these sides. Alright, let's test it on this guy. So this is where it's going to mount. So this is our steering handle, and that actually looks pretty good. Just eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we want this to be pretty much straight up and down, and this pretty much flat. And then we'll just add probably 2 mounting holes, let's say. Perfect. Then we do want these to be clearance holes and countersunk, so we'll just use our countersunk. Pop in a couple of screws here. And then to mount our battery box here, it does come with 2 holes in the back, which, sure, let's use those. Alright. So that is our battery box mounted on the top then. So I kind of got ahead of myself on this, and I forgot that I needed to put these back on before I painted it. And before I painted it, needed to epoxy these in just to give it more strength. So we just scraped the old paint off with a razor blade and that section there. And then we'll just fill this with epoxy. And I'm just using JB Weld 5-minute epoxy, and just about any of them should be fine. Alright, then we're just going to take it and fill in that gap. Alright, we'll let that set up and give it a couple of minutes, and then we'll be able to flip it over and do the other side. So moving on to wiring, we needed to add 26 inches of wire to these guys, adding in, and then we're also getting rid of the temporary connectors and adding these bullet connectors. So on this side, we're just adding all females on the ends of this, and then we'll do all males on the other end. So to solder these guys in, just heat this up. Way too much. And jam the end in. Let it cool. There you go. And then just repeat the process 5 more times. And we have all of our wires extended, and before we run it through, we just want to test and make sure that, 1, we're getting good connections, and 2, that everything is wired correctly. Sometimes you make mistakes when cutting and soldering, so we're just going to make sure. So we have all of our pieces painted, and it's all dry enough to start assembling here. And I think what we're going to start with is this main guy here. So we'll screw that on. Alright, then we're just going to work our way around here, just kind of making sure that this is still in the center. And that looks pretty good there. And alright, so that is that part so far, and you can see it really kind of stiffened it up just by having that. I think what we'll do is mount our motor. I already ran our wires through, and what I did is I put some heat shrink over these wires and then fed it through. Probably should have drilled a bigger hole, but they ended up getting in there, so. So now we can take this assembly and slide it through here. And you might be noticing that there is no paint on this tube, this main tube here, and that's for a reason. So as this is sliding in and out, whatever paint was on there is just going to get worn off. And we could start mounting this assembly in. And that one's pretty done. And then for this, we need to wire this through. By pushing this temporarily in there, that gives us more room to work on this end over here. So then we're going to slide that all the way in there. Just pushing up on it, kind of align it in there. And then we'll fill in this back here with hot glue. So I did have to scrape some of this paint off to get this thing to slide back on. Ideally, it would be better to take it off the inside, but we already glued in the rheostat there, so this will work just fine though. And take these wires and feed it through this assembly here. And you can start to see why we had to make these long, just long enough to fit in there. So this is going to be the interesting part, is trying to get all these wires lined up and pushed back in there. So let's start with these back three first. So after struggling with this for quite a bit, I was finally able to get these wires and the speed controller inside the tube. It is a tight fit. In hindsight, if this was just a slightly bit bigger ID, it would have went much easier. So future iterations, I would definitely bump that up a size, at least just in this section, so you can house all that stuff in there a lot easier. So we do need to add in our tube strap here, and I was looking at different options, and I still think that one of these, not ratchet straps, but it's like a tie-down strap, would probably be a good way to go. Except for we don't need these ends on here, so we're just going to cut those off. Alright, we have our strap all cut down, and we're going to screw it in the bottom side here. So to do so, we're just going to use wood screws again and a washer to kind of clamp it on. be pretty strong. I don't think that's going to be pulling out. Alright, so then we'll run our strap around to the other side, and using this end, we'll do the same thing over here. One other thing that I wanted to do is throw on some of this single-sided non-skid foam, and hopefully this does two things. One, it just covers the screw so it lessens any chance of it popping the tube, which would not be ideal. And then the other thing is it hopefully gives it more stickiness to the actual tube and kind of prevents it from sliding around. So I'll just layer some of these pieces going on around here. Sure, let's put one more on the bottom just for fun. There we go. Hook up a battery and check it out, fully assembled. Awesome. It works well. This battery pack is almost dead, so we'll throw that on the charger and then take this thing out for a spin. We'll find out if this prototype does what it needs to. So unfortunately, I don't live on a lake and I don't have a river near me, so we are loaded up in the car to go to a little lake pond around here and test this bad boy out and see how well it does. Alright, so let's unload this stuff, set it up. No problem. Alright, so then I'm going to take this, set it on the front here, and run our strap underneath. Alright. Alright, so we're strapped in. And in our battery pack. Oh, that's cold.
Yep, I bet.
I'd say that is a effective test.